Installing Grayscale Basic is actually very straightforward. You can either use the link at the bottom of this video or in the description, or you can use your favorite search engine and go to the website. In the website, we go to downloads and we select the first download, the complete package. Once the download is finished, we can just double click on the installer and run it. Yes, we want to run it. Next. We accept the agreement. Next. Take note of the folder in which Grayscale Basic has been installed. We're going to use that folder for the next step. We accept all the defaults. We might not need everything now, but it's a good idea to have them installed. And install. Once the installation is finished, we will be presented with the IDE. Grayscale Basic is a compiler. It takes a basic program or a program written in BASIC and compiles it to machine code. The developers have taken SimWrite and adapted it for use with Grayscale Basic so that it can give us an easier way to write programs. We can actually use any text editor to edit our programs and then have Grayscale Basic compile it, but using SimWrite is actually the easiest. So when it first opens, we will be presented with a first start sample, a release list and a readme. You can go through those, but they're not really necessary. The important things for us to know within SimWrite is how to get to all the things we need to do. If we look here at the top, you will see there is GC Basic and there's a little drop down menu, and there's a little cow with a question mark. That is the help file. We need to know how to get to help. So if you click on the cow, the help will open, and here we are at the root or search menu. So we can search for a command and it will show us all the listings related to that command. If we want help on one particular command, if we look at this little program, this first start sample, you will see that comments are green and commands are blue, and these are red, numbers and things. This is highlighting, and this shows us the easy stuff that I talked about for Grayscale Basic. If we need to know how a specific command works, we can just right click on that command and click on Grayscale Basic Help, and that will launch help for us for that particular command, explaining how the command works and giving us some examples. It's important that we know how to use help because we will be using it quite a lot during the course of this series. Right, the next one we've got here is view demos. Grayscale Basic has a lot of demo files, and you can look through those files to see if it might solve a problem for you, or just to look for inspiration on how to solve a problem. Here we've got hex and flash. A hex file is the file name for the file that gets written or burnt microcontroller itself. So if you press this button, it will make the hex file and then it will burn it via a programmer to our processor. So if we look here, there is a little one that only says flash. Flash means to burn to the processor or send it to the programmer, and then the programmer burns it to the processor. So if we want to do a quick checkout program and we want to run it quickly, we press hex and flash and it will make the program into a hex file or compile it and then flash it to the processor in one step. This next button, if you only need a hex file, and that hex file can maybe be programmed on a separate programmer or on a different computer, or some programmers even have a program to go function where you can just plug the programmer in and it will program. Our Hoverbot board doesn't use a loose programmer, it uses a bootloader, and we also do need to set up that bootloader, and we will do so momentarily. So we've got hex and flash to create the hex file and flash it directly, or we can just create a hex file, or we can flash the previous made hex file. So in order for us to set up Great Cow Basic for use with our Hoverbot board, we need to tell it which programmer to use. So like I said before, the program needs to be compiled into a hex file, and then it needs to be burnt onto the processor using a programmer. The Hoverbot does not use a separate programmer, it uses a bootloader. That makes it possible for us to use it directly in our USB port, so we don't need any additional hardware. But Great Cow Basic do need to know what bootloader we are using. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go to IDE Tools, Great Cow Basic Tools, and here Edit Programmer Preferences, and click on that. Right at the bottom of the list we will have DFU util for 16F145X USB. You might recognize this number because the microchip that we are using is a 16F1459. And we're going to take our mouse and drag it all the way up to the bottom and save. So essentially what this means is that Great Cow Basic will look first, is there a DFU enabled chip plugged into the USB port, i.e. our Hoverbot in bootloader mode. If it is, then it will burn the hex file to that chip. If there isn't, then it will try any of these programmers. But if you don't have anything plugged in, it will give you an error message. The error messages are discussed in the tutorial. And now we just say OK. And that's pretty much that for installing and setting up Great Cow Basic.